Hello, I'm Mandi McLeod. Welcome to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. Coming up in the show, FarmIQ's vision is to create a demand-driven integrated value chain for red meat that delivers sustainable benefits to all participants. We ask how they plan to achieve this. New Zealand agriculture has the lowest level of government support in the OECD. Is this a hospital pass for our country's biggest export earner? Merino meat, the new strategy for this rugged sheep. What will this mean for the merino industry and the red meat sector? Joining me today is Collier, CEO of FarmIQ, and Warwick, Voyce, CEO of FertCo. Welcome to the show, guys.
Morning.
Collier, what can you tell us about the ambitious plan that FarmIQ has got for the red meat sector, given that you've been going for, 9 months now?
Yep, we're making steady progress. Like any R&D project, I guess it's always a bit of a challenge, but if you looked across it, there's around about 250 farmers involved, which is about on target. We've got 250,000 odd EID tags out there in sheep, cattle and deer, which is again around about what we're aiming for. We're getting some great wins in the marketplace, learning a lot in the processing environment, getting the genetics program underway, and on farm, got the focus farms running. So I think we've had a pretty reasonable 9 months.
So tell us a bit more about the 250 farmers that you've got on board. Like, what are they? How are they actually using the information that you're giving them, and what are they doing?
At the moment, it's very much pulling information together, I guess, or working out how you can make EID systems run really easily on a farm, because in reality, you're trying to learn what the individual animal performance is and what the variations are. And so we've had, last season we had people trying different forages, different breeds and things, and looking how those animals perform differently at an individual level. And so we learned quite a lot about, different breeds. Some forages performed a whole lot better. But I think it's almost like at the moment, because it's an R&D project, getting the systems sorted so it's really easy for farmers to actually use those systems, easy to enter information, easy to get information back out just to see what those sort of trends are. So
what you're telling me is that if I was going to come on the program with you, I would put electronic ID into my cows and my sheep.
And your deer?
I don't have any deer, so but that would be quite a nice fantasy, but that's okay. So what else would I do? Like, tell me how I would participate in this project. Like, do I have to pay money to get involved? My understanding was that it's kind of driven from consumers back up through to genetics. Is that right?
Absolutely. And if you looked at the projects, there's one related to the markets. And so this year, in fact, this week, there's a rollout in Tesco's in the UK, 350 stores with a whole lot of new products, quite similar to what you've seen in Silver Fern Farm retail in New Zealand. So starting off the marketplace, but the back on the farm, no, there is no cost of being involved at the moment, probably just some time really, because the tags are supplied free. If you haven't got EID systems, you'd need to either borrow some or buy some, and that's not actually all that cheap. But it's really about, mostly from a farmer's perspective, it's really understanding what they want to get out of this individual information, what it's going to mean to their productivity gains. And we're just pulling those systems together to make, as I said earlier, make that really easy for them, I guess. Because at the moment, as a fair old challenge, I guess, getting, it's not insurmountable, but a fair old challenge, getting weigh scales to talk to EID readers and things, but that's pretty well sorted now. But getting that information back in the database and manipulating that information so it makes sense to a farmer is probably the biggest challenge. So,
Collier, you've convinced me on the benefits. How do I sign up? You've got 250 farmers. Is it an open book? Or how do I get on board?
Look, we've got 250 farmers. It's still an open book. However, you've got to remember this program, it's 7 years long, and the first 3 years are all about working at what works and what doesn't work. And so 250 farmers at the moment from our program perspective is sufficient. But look, if there's any keen farmers out there that want to get involved, go to the website and sign up.
OK, well, we'll look at doing a deal off camera then, shall we? OK. Now, it's a well-known fact that agriculture in New Zealand is unsupported by our government, really. What people may not have realised is that the extent of the lack of support, which is around about 1%, compared with 18% as an average in the OECD. Do you think, Warwick, that with only 1% support, we in New Zealand agriculture are in danger of missing out when compared to our compatriots overseas?
Well, I'm not really a big fan of government intervention with regard to anything, and for that matter. But no, I don't think so. I think it probably encourages people down on the farm and industry as a whole to be innovative and to support our own industry. I'd much rather that our industry supported itself and moved itself forward rather than had to rely on bureaucrats, to be honest.
Do you think, though, that because we've got this low-level government support, that when there is a reason for government to come in and create agricultural-based policies, there is actually then a lack of competency around making government policies that actually work because they haven't had the practice, if you like, or the, you know, they haven't been involved in doing it, and there's a danger of them going overboard with that?
I don't really think so. I mean, just that would come down to the core competencies inside of MAF, and I don't think you need to have a subsidy system to make sure they're close to the action, and I'm sure Wayne McLeod would agree. But I think that the biggest danger about subsidies in the past and the way they were driven offshore was that they provided a subsidy for production. And because you were ramping up production, making great mountains of butter or grains, that was really trade distorting. Whereas now, if you're the UK and they're supporting hedgerows and badgers and things, it's not the environment. It's not such a big issue in world trade. So I think the way they've moved is probably less damaging than what it was.
So one of the reasons that they cite about not having subsidies is that it promotes productivity. So my challenge to you to answer is this. If that is the case, why in New Zealand are we still struggling with productivity? With no subsidies, you'd think that we would be becoming very innovative, but it seems to me that's fallen off. Is it because we're actually the market is giving us enough money at the moment to stifle innovation?
A little bit of apathy, you think?
Bit of apathy, maybe? I don't know.
Well, maybe it's something to do with the individual ownership of the farm. At the end of the day, I guess, if they are feeling comfortable with their level of earnings, they're not likely to innovate as quickly as if they were under some sort of financial pressure. But maybe it's the age group. Maybe it's just the individuals that are down on the farm. And I don't know. Big question.
There's certainly a huge variation. If you go to beef and lamb and look at the variation in the economic service reports, there's a massive variance between the top guys and the bottom guys. And I know recently they've been trying to pull apart data to work out what the motivation is. I know going back a few years, quite often it was level of debt. And you were talking about motivation, and if you've got the bank chasing you around, you're probably more motivated than if you haven't. Having said that also, I mean, the last sort of 10 years in farming, there wasn't a whole lot of capital to do anything. Certainly sheep and beef farming. And so I think that really stifles innovation as well. People sort of pull down the shutters and say, look, I've got to do my best out of this lot and see if I can survive, which is not a positive environment. And so the last 12 months is, I think, giving everybody a breath of fresh air and opportunity to get going again.
I kind of guess for me the next question is if we've got to feed the growing exponentially population and productivity is the key, what is actually going to be then the trigger to do it? And maybe the merino farmers have come up with a bit of a strategy where they're actually looking at putting merino meat into the marketplace. Now, merino lamb, as I'm doing the lamb because it's going to be on the market as an 18-month-old rather than with no teeth cut. How do you think they're going to sell this story of merinos, which we see on our blankets and our clothing has been this gorgeous little lamb, which really doesn't look like a merino much anyway. And then all of a sudden we're sitting down to Sunday roast, wearing our merinos.
There'll be a fair amount of disconnect, surely. I mean, you don't think about your jersey when you're eating your lamb roast. I think someone has done some really smart thinking here. I think someone has earned their Tim Tam for morning tea. These guys have shifted the goalposts slightly and they've said, well, how do we get another clip of wool off these critters? Well, let them live for another 6 months. Let's get another clip of wool off, and that's where a lot of the value is driven. And let's see if we can extract a premium out of the meat. What, 800,000 merinos killed every year? It's not a huge amount. They're not going to flood the market with merino meat. Find a niche, pop it in there, get a premium. Great thinking.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well. That's exactly where they're going as far as I'm aware. Farm IQ and merino are tied together because we're sort of partly powering it, and certainly Saw Fern Farms are closely involved with the Merino Initiative. And I think it's, as part of the PGP or the Farm IQ territory, is actually making sure we understand what consumers want, a whole lot better, because New Zealand has been, whether we liked it or not, in the commodity business for years, because we were really producing more product than demand. And so now we've actually got the opportunity with supply levels down to exactly what you're saying, actually learn a whole lot more about what these customers are after and really target them. And there are a whole lot of very wealthy people in the world that are very interested in these sort of niche products, and that's where we've got to take certainly our lamb industry. Venison's pretty well there now, and I guess even some of the beef in the end.
So good, smart marketing by Merino. Thumbs up, Tim Tams for them. Coming up after the break. With a total asset base of $32 billion, Māori agriculture is recognised as a significant player in New Zealand by BNZ, who appointed Pierre Tohei to the position of Head of Māori Business. Is this a move that others will follow, or the first creation of a new sector in agriculture? And the USDA announced a definition for sustainable agriculture. We ask, how sustainable is the definition? And Fonterra's record payout, can this be sustained for a secure dairy future? And if so, we ask how? All this when we return. Welcome back to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. BNZ have recently announced a head of Māori business. Do you guys think this is a smart move, or is it going to further segment our agricultural sector by creating a Māori and non-Māori division?
Well, I did a little bit of reading on this one. It's quite an interesting one. There's 300,000 hectares of Maori land ownership and freehold title. It's quite a bit. Statistically, I think they broke it down to say that there was 80% of it was performing relatively poorly. So I guess complex ownership, all those sort of things that we know, but there's an obvious lack of capital here for development of this land. If the BNZ are brave enough and if they can get involved with the governance of these land ownerships, great, all power to them, I'd say. If they can put strong governance, strong leadership in place, they can lend them some money, give them the opportunity to develop, increase productivity, great, I'd say, go for it. I think it's a great initiative.
Yeah, it's probably like looking at any customer base. You're going to try and segment it to make sure that your offering is relevant to that segment. In this case, as you're saying, there's quite a few different issues around Maori land ownership. In fact, there's quite significant governance challenges because there's multi-owners. So in some respects, yeah, making sure that your offering is relevant to Maori is probably no different, I guess, although I'll probably get shot for saying this, segment to large dairy farmers or something. So we get a bit hung up possibly around the racism side of things, but it's more about making sure as a company you're focused on your customer, I think.
Do you think though, like because I want to take this out further, because to me, and heaven forbid we use the word racist, we've got the Ahawhenua Trophy that recognises Māori excellence. We're now starting to see the call for Māori training programs in agriculture. Is it about Māori that they need to have the special treatment in those particular areas? Or is it about recognising people that have not been given the right tools to perform, whether they're Māori or non-Māori?
Oh, I think you've got a unique set of challenges there. I mean, it is complex, and at the end of the day, if it's about increasing productivity and increasing wealth for the landowner, then all power to them, as I say. And if the BNZ are able to get in there and offer them the opportunity to do so, I don't think racism has anything to do with it. I don't think it's a hand up or a hand out or anything along those lines. I think it's a corporate looking at an opportunity, seeing a big opportunity, 300,000 hectares, 80% of it could do better. Capital is a restriction. Let's get amongst it and see if we can't help a few things out.
So do you see now that the BNZ have taken this, it appears to be a really good strategic move, are we going to see more head of Māori business coming up in other banks or to follow suit, or is BNZ going to be right out there as a market leader in this one?
Goodness knows. I guess the other banks will be watching with interest because they'll be, all the issues or the opportunities we've just discussed, they'll be sitting there saying, well, I wonder what the market reaction is going to be, wonder what the business opportunity might be for us. So I would have thought they'll sit there for 6 months and have a think about it, just to see what happens, maybe longer, before they leap anywhere.
Well, yeah, that and I think if one bank's prepared to break the ice and go for it, if there's dough in it at the end of the day, I'd say there'd be banks lining up.
Yep.
It is commercial.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Okay, moving on to sustainable agriculture. The USDA has just released a legal definition for sustainable agriculture. And they're taking it to mean an integrated system of plant and animal production practices that have site-specific application over the long term with 5 key points. Now, what do you think about that definition? Is it a good one? Did we need a legal definition? Coming
from the US, you're bound to get a legal definition. They don't do anything else.
True.
I guess the challenge in these things is, sustainability for my 10 cents worth is making sure that you can still, do tomorrow what you do today without, effectively wrecking things, or better, actually adding value and making it more productive. But when you are looking at the definition, when you throw things in there as like being able to, feed the world sort of thing, or that's going to be always a bit of a challenge, I suppose, because, on one hand trying to feed everybody, on the other hand trying to make it totally sustainable. I think there's always going to be sort of ups and downs in the process because you're going to learn as you go, and those two are always going to sort of probably put a bit of pressure on each other.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, was there a requirement for a definition? I'd say yes, and on the whole, I agree with the definition. I think it ticks a few big boxes. There's a little bit of fish hugging in there too, you know, a little bit of touchy-feely stuff. But, you know, some of those guys are that way inclined, let's face it. But most of the
fish hugging, it kind of just
Hug a fish.
Yeah.
Well, with a great deal of difficulty. But you know, these greenies will have a crack. They but there are some real fundamental stuff in there that I think you could basically draw some. Well, you could get some practical guidelines out of it.
Yep.
There's some things that sort of refer through to doing things biologically if you can, and New Zealand's done this for quite some time. I mean, clover in our pastures, rather than using all the nitrogen out of a bag, so on and so forth. I'm in the fertiliser industry, so sustainability is a big issue in our industry. And I don't know if you're aware, but our friends from China have just become a net importer of phosphate rock. So that's quite a big deal. And at the end of the day, if we can become more efficient with what we're doing as far as naturally occurring resources, phosphate rock or whatever it may well be, then great, I'd say let's go for it. And I would say if most farmers read that, they would probably say, yeah, I pretty much agree with it. And most of them are probably already applying it anyway in their heart of hearts. So. Yeah,
quite often the challenge in these things is how do you measure it? Certainly one of the Farm IQ projects is all around sustainability. So, and it's, you know, as part of the overall database, how do you record things which can actually tell you whether you're being sustainable or not? You know, whether it be water quality, whether it be carbon footprints, whatever is really required, probably more from a consumer perspective than just than feeling good for ourselves. But if we can manage to turn those definitions as something that farmer can actually measure on the ground, so he knows where he stands, then I think you might stand a chance, and even better if you can put some financial incentives around it, so farmers actually get some benefit from doing these things.
Now, Fonterra has announced a record payout. What I want to know right now from you guys is, as we sit at the cusp of a potential another global recession with Greece potentially defaulting, how sustainable is this payout? How sustainable is the dairy industry in New Zealand in the light of another financial recession?
Cripes, I mean, I was involved with dairy cows in Landcorp, but I don't have too much to do with them now. You watch the dairy industry from the, the sidelines, and they're doing a tremendous job. Having said that, like any other international business, they ride or fall, as you say, on the economic strength or weakness. And so I think if the world had a bit of a meltdown, things could soften. Having said that, there's not a whole lot of stockpiles as far as I'm aware around the world, which used to cause problems. I know the Yanks are trying to step up their dairy production because the prices are high, but in the end, goodness knows, we won't know until we've really seen it. And as I say, I haven't really sat down and tried to pull apart what Fonterra is saying at the moment. Let's hope it continues.
So do you think that, and this is probably something that I've been critical of saying, is that some of our dairy farm businesses are viable by good luck rather than by good management? Because they've had their payouts have been coming in from Fonterra, they actually haven't really had to manage a business per se. And for a while there, they were having to manage a business with high debt levels, a payout that was on the down. Do you think now that we've come back up and it's looking a bit rosier, that those skills that they were starting to learn around business management will be continued to be built on, or are they just going to be chucked out again as people make hay while the sun shines, for a corny expression?
My ball.
I was going to say something if you want to.
A controversial one. Well, that again is another big question. I don't think so. I think farmers learnt some pretty heavy messages over the last 12, 18 months, or how long it's been, 2-3 years. They've learnt some lessons. I think also there's probably been a bit of a handing over of the mantle a little bit with regard to sharing of information and involving more people in their businesses on farm, looking at it from a business perspective, more involvement from bankers and all those terrible sort of people, the accountant looking at things quite heavily. So they've learnt their lessons, I'd suggest. These guys are good business operators. I don't think they're going to sit back on their laurels.
And I think a lot of them have built some good systems to actually work out where the bottom line is. And so, I mean, they knew what the bottom line was, but on the fly, you can work out, well, if my feed inputs are this and the payout's going to be this, they know what the balance is the whole time. And so they can ramp inputs up and down much more flexibly than they would have done in the past, because they know they've had the experience, as you were saying, of what happens when you hit the bottom and you need to pull cost out. So, I think we're a hang of a lot better prepared for any downturn than we were, say, 5 years ago.
Happy days for our economy then, isn't it? Okay, coming up after the break, we're going to get to my favourite section. We ask Collier and Warwick what's got their goat. Is it going to be a rant or will it be a rave? You'll have to join us after the break to find out. Welcome back to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. It's time now for our weekly rant and rave. Warwick, you look like you're all fired up there for something.
I've got a bit of a rave, actually.
Well, Tim Tams all round?
Well, yeah, well, it'll be a lot of Tim Tams because it's a big group of people I'm talking about. With our company, we've been going through a bit of a growth phase recently, and therefore we've been on a bit of a recruitment drive, always an interesting time in a company's evolution. And I've been seeing a lot of Generation Y, and so I sat down and I read a book about Generation Y. They've got lots of quirks about them, these characters. They're an age group between about 18 and 30 odd, 33.
So we're just in there.
Well, we didn't make it, unfortunately. Yeah, we missed that boat. But a lot of people look at them from a very negative point of view, and they want everything, they want it now, and blah blah blah. They're very needy sort of characters, big appetites for debt and all this sort of drama. But you turn it around and you have a look at them from another perspective, and you sort of say, well, what are the strong things that these guys have got? They've got a whole lot of stuff that are really going for them. They've got a huge appetite for information. They haven't known a world without the internet, They don't really respect our worldly knowledge, well, particularly people older than us, because they can just Google it. If they want to know something that we know, they just Google it. Away they go. There it is, easy peasy. Off I go. Wikipedia. But a lot of those things are really strong. Upsides, they have a tendency to not let anything get in their way. They have strong desires to succeed. As I say, they want to be the best at everything. They have a short expectation or time expectation to succeed. So they're very, very driven. One thing I would say is that if you're going to employ one, and we just employed 3 of them in one hit, if you're going to employ one, make sure you can live up to their expectations, because they do have high expectations. If you don't meet their expectations, they're out of here, eh? See you later. I can get another job in 2 minutes as far as they're concerned. Just Google it. So yeah, I quite enjoyed meeting a lot of Generation Y and hearing a lot of what they've got to say. They are still conscientious, they still want to succeed, they're still eager. So I would say if you're looking to employ some people, don't disregard Generation Y. They are the future, and God knows that agriculture need a lot of young people coming into our into our industry.
And you can bet that they Googled you before they came in for the interview. You and Fertco, no doubt. So.
Oh, God knows what they found.
Oh, I'll be checking it out later on. Collier.
Well, I'm also going to be a bit boring, I suppose, and go for the rave rather than the rant, because I think there's always been this challenge and the sort of sword hanging over New Zealand agriculture, I suppose, with this ETS, and I think the government have got it pretty right at the moment with their pragmatic approach to what we can do. I mean, at the end, from a farmer's perspective, we haven't got any ready technology we can apply on a farm to reduce our emissions, so, taxing someone and they can't change their behaviour seems pretty silly. We're doing research which is going to give us some more learnings about what we can do to change things, and so I think giving us time to get that sort of stuff well and truly sorted before we even go down this track is a great thing. And I guess the only thing we've got to keep in the back of our mind is that we have got consumers out there which are pretty keen on keeping their carbon footprints a bit lower. Give or take a bit on what they're prepared to pay. So I don't think we can ignore it. We've still got to do something with it. But yeah, pat on the back for the government, because I think they've taken a sensible approach. I
completely agree with that. Well, speaking of the government, my rant goes out to ACT MP, or outgoing ACT MP, John Biscowen. Shame on you for going on national tally last night and saying that it was too hard to get up at 4:20 in the morning to go to work for a $150,000 salary. Spare a thought for all of those out there in the agriculture sector at least, and I'm sure there are very many in the non-agriculture sector, that get up, way before 4:20 at stupid o'clock in the morning to go and deal with the jobs that they have to do, fair weather or foul. They don't have to catch a plane to where they go. They get out there in and amongst it. And most of them are not pulling down $150,000 in salary. So shame on you, John, shame on you. And that really wraps up our show, I think. On that note, we're going to wrap it up. No Tim Tams for the ACT Party. That wraps up our latest edition of Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. I'd like to thank my guests, Collier, Isaacs and Warwick Voyce. And thanks to you too for watching. Remember to check out my blog online at country99tv.co.nz. I love hearing from you. I'll catch you next week. And in the meantime, may the pig of happiness shine down upon you.